Jimmy Carter says, I hope all of you will use the principles of Allah to bring peace and justice to all. Okay, see, Jimmy, it's your fault that people want to make nut jokes about you. Following the so-called principles of Allah is what led to that Iranian hostage crisis. And I think you were president while that was happening. How do you go from being a president who's had to deal with terrorists, following the principles of Allah, to seeing their ideology as the way of peace? I guess stranger things have happened. I mean, you got to be president.
I think what happened. Propaganda.
I guess Jimmy, who claims to be a Christian, missed that part in the Bible where it says you can't serve two masters. I mean, you can try, but ultimately, it doesn't turn out good. I don't follow both Jesus and Allah. And as a follower of Jesus, I'm not going to demand that you follow him too. You have nothing to fear from us Christians if you don't want to follow Jesus. But yeah, some of us might get a little testy if you try to make us follow a way other than his. And Jimmy Carter is beyond flirting with an ideology whose followers kill people for not accepting their ideology. On a side note, I reckon even though Nidal Hasan says he wants to be a citizen of the Islamic State, I figured Jimmy Carter would disagree with changing Nidal Hasan's status of a perpetrator of workplace violence to terrorism now. Anyway, for those of you who don't dig Jesus, that's your business, and feel free to go on about it. But Jimmy Carter claims to be a Christian. And as a Christian, I'm pretty sure it's like dipping your hand in donkey urine and then slapping Jesus across the face with it. For a Christian to say, we are all Americans in a system that allows basic human rights, peace, justice, and the ability to treat each other as equals. I hope all of you will use the principles of Allah to bring peace and justice to all. Mr. Carter, as a Christian, do you think Jesus, the Prince of Peace, came on a rescue mission to be scourged and crucified just so you can give credit to Allah for the so-called principles of peace? And let me correct old Jim on this. In this country, these basic human rights aren't an allowance. They're God-given, inalienable, and certain. That being life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And if you really understand that, everything else falls into place. But because too many don't understand that, or rejects that, is why we don't enjoy a more ideal level of peace, justice, and equality. Y'all, listen, those who talk of peace are the mouthpieces of destruction, because talk of peace is the language of the self-righteous and the language of conformity and control. Talk of peace is the song that preludes slaughter. You don't get peace by compromising with people whose concept of human rights are grossly different than yours. You don't compromise with people who justify to themselves rape, torture for conversion, and murder. This only leads to more dragged out war, because the pacifists think that peace is achieved by compromising with actual hostile factions and self-effacement, ergo accusing the nation they represent as just as evil and dragging them into the blender of moral equivalence. The Bible warns us of such people. 1 Thessalonians 5:3, while people are saying peace and safety, destruction will come on them suddenly, as labor pains on a pregnant woman, and they will not escape. Now, with such apocalyptic implications, am I suggesting that people like Jimmy Carter or John Kerry or Barack Obama are the Antichrist? No. What I'm saying is that the Bible has given a template, and if an elected official reads like this template, he doesn't have to be the Antichrist, whether it's Jimmy Carter or anybody else. You still might not want to follow their lead, because their self-righteous ideals are formulaic to destruction. They do not result in true peace. Even Emperor Palpatine ushered in his murderous tyranny by preaching peace and security. This is why Jesus, the Prince of Peace himself, asserts this sanctifying clarification that sets him apart from those who talk of peace. Jesus, the Prince of Peace, didn't even use this kind of language. Jesus said, "Do not suppose that I have come to bring peace to the earth. I did not come to bring peace, but a sword." This saying reads true that if you want peace, prepare for war. Do you understand how valuable the state of peace is? I keep telling y'all, Things of value have to be protected. You lock your doors because your home contains valuables like your family and things you own to keep your family comfortable and entertained. You may even own firearms should the locks on your doors not be enough to deter the covetousness of others. People steal or destroy things of value. Peace and freedom are valuable states, which means they will always be a target, and they have to be defended with fire. Jesus isn't interested in killing, but for those who intrude upon people's right to live and be free and not at the forced expense of another's rights. He's got a sword with their name on it, because Jesus is the truth, and the truth sets people free from the lie that says they're not. Jimmy Carter is suckered into believing that the Palestinians are engaged in a noble war for territory, and the Israelites are the evil meanies denying them the freedom to have their state. And Jimmy, just like a lot of liberals, don't understand that this is about positioning Islam to choke Israel to death. I'm Alfonso Rachel Zonation, and a state of peace is something I desire for everyone too. But if you're going around sawing people's heads off, or blowing people up, or lining people up and shooting them, then those are some principles of peace you might want to question Allah about. That is, if you weren't worried about the others who are following the peaceful principles of Allah who would murder you for apostasy. It's your fault that people want to make nut jokes about you.